everybody, welcome to this interview series being conducted by Core Recruitment. My name's Krishnan Doyle, and we are doing a number of different interviews looking at industry trends for 2025, and we're going to be meeting some great business leaders through this interview series that we're conducting as well. As always, in terms of recruitment, salary, benchmarking, all of that kind of stuff, please get in touch and we can assist with anything on that front in 2025 as well. Now, we are joined by Brian from Dishoom, and welcome, Brian. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Very good indeed. Very, very good indeed. And firstly, just have to say, I know it's kind of like, slightly old news now, but congratulations on your promotion. Very well deserved.
Thank you. No real change. I just wanted some attention, so thank you for giving it to me.
Love that. Segueing in, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey with Dishoom, how you started, how things progressed, and how you guys have grown?
Yeah, sure. We started in Covent Garden 14 years ago. Shumlin and Covey set the business up in June of 2010 was when it opened, and I joined towards the end of that year when they felt like they just wanted to bring somebody in with a little bit more restaurant experience. And we've been getting on like a house on fire ever since. And yeah, just sort of building it up from pounding the pavements, giving away free breakfast, begging people to come in and have breakfast in an Indian restaurant when they really didn't want to, in 2010 and 11 to now, doing lots of really, really fun things and having a team of nearly 2,000 people and all sorts of things that I don't think we could ever have imagined. So it's been a really
Yeah.
fun journey.
I mean, I think if you look at any of my social media posts, you can probably tell pretty instantly that I am a massive Dishoom fan, especially the breakfast. So very well done on that. It's phenomenal. In terms of your own background and experience, Brian, though, in terms of like how you started into hospitality, were you hospitality man and boy, or how did you kind of get into it?
I had always planned on being a lawyer actually, but I sort of grew up dirt poor, and when I went to university, I to put myself through university, I did two things. I did painting, cleaning, and decorating for people who left their student accommodation for the local estate agents. So people left their places in a mess. I'd go in, fix it, tidy it up, and then I'd get paid a little bit out of their deposits. But because I always felt bad taking money out of people's deposits, I didn't make enough money out of that. So I went for a restaurant job as well. And I walked in for a waiter's job actually. And they said, we don't need a waiter, but we do need a restaurant manager. So come in and do that if you want. And I thought, well, you sound bonkers, but I'll come in and give it a bash. And I just massively fell in love with working in restaurants. So did that for a while. I actually, for a couple of years, I ended up loving it so much. I dropped out of university and decided to come back to London and then work every job that I could work in a restaurant until I felt that I was at least as good as anybody else doing it with me at the time. So came in, took a job as a pot washer, and then a food runner, then a waiter, then a host, bar back, bartender, everything you can do in a restaurant, I did it. And when I felt like I understood that enough to be a proper restaurant manager, then I sort of started moving into that. Then a friend of mine bought some restaurants from Giorgio Locatelli, and I helped him run those for a bit. Again, he asked me to come and run a few of them. I don't think I was ready to do it, but I did. And then I just turned up 3 or 4 hours before anybody else, left 3 or 4 hours after everybody else, worked really inefficiently, but got the job done until I figured it out. And then in that process, I met a guy called Robbie Barg, who owns Gorgeous Group, and he was helping Shumlin Covey set up Dishoom, and he put us in touch. And the rest is history. 14 years now of Dishooming since then.
My God, so it's all thanks to Robbie then, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Oh, give him a shout out as well. That's fantastic. We've got a couple of topics that we're going to run over today. The first one's obviously kind of like a very hot one at the moment, especially given everything that's going on in the world. But sustainability. How are you kind of like adapting your model at the moment to be as sustainable as you can be? And what innovations are you looking at putting into the business for next year?
Well, I don't think we talk about it a huge amount, but looking after the planet is really, really important to us. And we spent a lot of time with Mike Berners-Lee a few years ago trying to understand the scale of the problem, and also what we might be able to do about it that was meaningful and not just something that gave us a badge that allowed us to say that we're doing something for the planet. And I've got to say, it was a lot trickier to get my head around than I thought it was going to be, right? I thought it was going to be as simple as saying, right, we've got this problem, we're kicking out way more CO2 than we should be, go and plant a stack of trees and everything will be fine. And then pretty much every solution we came up with, someone gave us a problem to, right? Just said, right, I know you think that's a good solution, but here's why it's not. And it became really, really tricky. So we spent a stack of time with Mike Berners-Lee and his team just trying to figure it all out. And I think we arrived at a place where we just thought, right, do things that we think are important, that are going to help communities today, and then also are going to make a real dent or an impact in the problem. But rather than do nothing, definitely, get out there, do something, take the first steps, and then keep building on it. So now we invest in a couple of projects. We plant lots of sustainable trees and crops in the UK that are going to eliminate a lot of or remove a lot of CO2 from the environment, but also help the communities that we're planting in. And then we're investing in some projects in India as well that are helping people move away from burning solid fuels to more sustainable ways there, but also just improving their lives a little bit. So with all of that, we now remove more CO2 from the environment than we emit in scopes 1, 2, and 3. So through our entire supply chain and everything we do as an operation, and a lot of our team travel as well, we remove more carbon from the environment than all of that together emits. But we're still constantly trying to figure out what the best thing to do on that front is, because it doesn't feel like there's a magic bullet. I guess my view on that is, yeah, there are lots of things you can do, but in the absence of doing nothing because you're scared that it's going to be the wrong thing, I actually think it's a good thing just to go and do something and get involved in projects that you believe in and think are brilliant and exciting and interesting. Do that as opposed to feel like you've got to tick a box and put a badge on your website.
100%. I completely agree. Just on the topic of India, and it wasn't really covered by the topics that we were covering today, but I know that you still do the thing within Dishoom that for every meal that's bought, you still are kind of like providing a meal for a child in India. Are you still doing that? And how many have you done so far?
Yeah, we're doing that both in India and in the UK. So we work with a charity partner called Akshaya Patra in India, and we work with Magic Breakfast here in the UK. And just because actually there are a lot of kids who go to school here in the UK not having had breakfast. And amazingly, it takes about 2 years off their educational experience going through school, not being properly fed before they turn up at school. So really
Wow.
good education as well. And the meals we provide in India, we provide in schools, which get a lot of young girls into schools who might not have gone to school otherwise. And I think it's doing the education piece as well as the feeding piece that we think is really, really important, because that just sort of breaks a lot of barriers for people. It's really, really, really helpful. And we have now donated over 25 million meals.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. You must be very proud of that. Must be very proud of it. The next topic I wanted to cover was a little bit on the technology side of things, because AI is coming, the robots are coming. So in terms of like, but Dishoom, the service is always incredible, always very personalized. I see the same person in Shoreditch all the time when I kind of like go in. I'm, kind of like on that side of things. How are you guys integrating technology into the business, and what changes do you see coming in the next year?
Sorry, my dog's being a pain. I, to be honest with you, I'm not scared of the computers. I think that they are helpful if you don't allow them to replace hospitality, but instead use them to enhance it. And I think the truth is that AI is so unbelievably powerful that it really can transform your business. And I think we're looking really hard now at how it can help us to just have better insight, to reduce the times where we're batting intuitions about when we're trying to make decisions, and instead have really clear data and information in front of us. I think that's where AI can be unbelievably powerful. Unfortunately, I think in the restaurant industry, we're stuck with a lot of legacy systems all over the place that aren't brilliant at giving you the data and the insight that you need. Certainly is my experience talking to a lot of people. And very often, I chat to people who are trying to make really complicated, difficult decisions without the information that they necessarily need to be able to do that. So there's a decent amount of guesswork involved. And in an industry where we're massively labor led, right? Like we're quite a labor intensive industry. We have lots of human beings delivering incredible hospitality, and it should always be that way. It is important to make sure that you're not burning 50-pound notes anywhere because you're being inefficient or making the wrong decisions. And wherever AI can help you to do that, I think it's a really important thing. The industry, I don't think I've ever seen it under quite as much pressure as it's under at the moment. The recent budget wasn't very helpful, but I think there are a lot of other things just piling on top of each other, not least of which is the incredible amount of inflation that we've seen over the years.
Mm,
The consumers' sort of inability to take on much more on price rises, really. So I think all those cost increases that are coming into businesses are now really struggling to pass those on to guests because guests are saying, hang on a second, like eating out is becoming less and less affordable for me because I don't know, prices have gone up by X amount over the last few years. We now need to try and figure out how to be more efficient. I think that's really, really important. And I think eliminating bad decisions, wasteful decisions, is a good way to do that. And I think AI can help massively with that.
yeah, 100%. Next topic was very close to our heart, obviously, talent and diversity and inclusion. The market in terms of recruitment at the moment is incredibly competitive when it comes to restaurants and talent. How are you retaining your top people and how are you attracting the best talent at the moment at Dishoom?
I think it's not really an at the moment thing for us. It's what we've done for years and years and years, which is, I think at the beginning, figuring out who we were. That's what we did anyway. I mean, I definitely can't prescribe what others should do, but we spent a lot of time figuring out who we are, what we're about, what sort of business we want to be, what sort of place we want to be as a workplace, and what sort of place we want to be for our guests. And then we spent probably more time than most articulating that, and just distilling it down into ways of communicating to our team so that everybody who joins on day one is crystal clear on who we are, what we're about, what the values are of the business, what it's going to be like to work here, so that people who aren't up for the sort of culture that we want to deliver at Dishoom can opt out really early and decide to go and do something else. But people who are can sort of find a home that they want to spend a lot of time in, and then be a part of that and enhance and build and work on delivering that culture day in and day out. And what we've found is that for the most part means that people are doing the right thing when nobody's looking all over the business. They're looking out for each other. They have each other's backs. And I think when you're able to, and I'm not saying we don't get it wrong 100 times a day, because we definitely do, but when you're able to create a work environment where it feels like you're all pulling in the same direction, everybody's got your back, and you're all doing your absolute best to do the right thing at all times, no matter what the challenges are. I just feel like that knits people together and helps us to have some of the lowest staff turnover in the industry, some of the highest retention, and to just attract some of the most incredible people.
Yeah, absolutely. You've obviously looked at some different formats in Dishoom, which we'll talk about kind of like, recent as well. Have you kind of had to change your model at all in terms of like how you staff things, or given the kind of like labor shortages over the last couple of years, have you had to change anything there?
Weirdly, I think we sort of zigged when other people zagged. When definitely there are lots of struggles. Like wages are going up, what, 10% really. Next year they went up quite considerably the year before. Prices have been going up massively. It's tricky, and I think a lot of people were staffing down because of that. We did the opposite. We were seeing a lot of staff turnover in our first month or so. Dishoom's a really busy place. Can be intimidating on your way in. And I think we decided, right, well, let's make that a stack better for people. Let's make sure that we put a dedicated person in every single restaurant who welcomes anybody who comes into that restaurant, who, along with the other people that are helping train and develop them, just is a buddy for them, who nurtures them on the way in, who's a point of contact for them, who can make sure they meet all the people that they should be meeting, can make sure that any questions they have are answered, etc. So we put more people into all of our restaurants to do that. And that for us lowered that staff turnover quite considerably in the first few months, and then has left us with happier people, more retention, and ultimately, weirdly, a lower staffing cost because we're spending a little bit less on recruiting people who aren't staying very long in those first few weeks and months.
Well, and when you say happier people, all of that side of things, I mean, do you guys do like, is it surveys or how do you kind of like measure happiness within kind of like the teams?
We do a number of surveys, yeah. And then I think there's really no substitute for just going and talking to people in every corner of the business, right? So pop in, talk to whoever's washing the dishes, talk to whoever's in any part of the restaurant that you know you might overlook if you're running around and you're super busy. Make sure you don't, and just very intentionally go and chat to people, check in on them. I just find there's no substitute for going, having a chat, asking people what we're getting right, asking people what we're getting wrong, and taking a bit of advice from your team as to what you might do better. I find that really useful. Surveys are really useful as well. But I just find when you sit and chat to someone and see the whites of their eyes for a bit, you get a really honest answer to some things that they might not write down in a survey.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of diversity and inclusion, obviously it's a really hot topic everywhere at the moment. What kind of like major events or trends are you seeing at the moment, and what do you expect to see next year?
And then we just need to keep working to make our workplaces fair and brilliant for everybody, and places that everyone can come and enjoy in exactly the same way. Keep working on understanding each other, keep working on building little bridges wherever there are differences. I think provided we continue to do that, and I think actually the UK has done a better job in the last couple of years on that than it has done for a decent amount of time before that, then I think we'll be in a good place. But I think it's just sort of keep fighting the good fight would be my view on that at the moment.
100%, 100%. So the next topic onto customer experience. What are you doing at Dishoom and what have you been doing to drive more loyalty within your customer base?
I think, again, the same thing that we've always done, and the same thing, well, the only thing that we think really does drive loyalty is really concentrate on the experience and make it better today than it was yesterday in every way that you can. Make it better tomorrow than it is today. And concentrate on making sure that every one of your guests feels seen, heard, cared for, looked after in the best possible way that you know how. If you do that, ultimately, you're going to create a feeling in that guest that makes them feel like they want to come back and spend time in a place where they are looked after, as opposed to somewhere where they might not be looked after quite as well. And I think that's what drives loyalty. So everything else is fine, but I think it's cursory and relatively ineffective in my view and experience, versus just working really hard on the basics, which are looking after people well, making sure your team is super happy and that they're looking after your guests in the best possible way. And then just, yeah, driving standards, making sure everything's brilliant every single time as much as you can do so.
Perfect. Coming back to the team happiness thing just for a second, but I mean, there's been a lot of talk kind of like this year about benefits and all of that side of things as well. If there was one benefit that emotively you thought kind of like, you know, your team that really resonated with your team, what do they talk about? What do you think that is?
If you stayed to Dishoom for more than 2 years, we'd take you to Bombay on an incredible money can't buy Bombay boot camp where we go around to all of the places that have inspired us. We spend time with some really amazing people that have inspired us, and we just have an absolute blast. And I'm probably not understating it when I say that people are different when they come back from their trip than they are before they go. They really walk around the restaurant and get it and understand all the different little design cues all over the restaurant. They really sort of feel the love that's gone into each one of our restaurants. Um, and it's just a super special thing. And once you're in that club, I mean, people talk about it all the time, and it's a really fun thing.
Excellent. And just when we're on the topic, can you just like, because your job titles obviously internally are slightly different to some of them externally, and just some of the connotations of those job titles, like, I mean, I think is really interesting. Can you just give us a little bit on that as well?
Yeah, truthfully, I don't think we ever really believed in job titles, and we didn't have them. So we'd be, we call ourselves Bubboos, which I don't think you'd ever really call yourself. A Bubbo is probably someone who does very little, sits behind a desk, and kind of tells people what to do. So slightly derogatory term is what we call ourselves as managers. Um, and we just had really. We've got lots of language within Dishoom that makes no sense outside of Dishoom, to be honest with you. But we'd never really thought about them. And then over the years, we have found that, okay, it's probably quite useful that somebody knows who you are and what you do. So we've adapted some of them, but we're pretty loose on job titles. If somebody wants a generic job title, they get one. But outside of that, you might be Darryl Waller if you're head of bars, and or chai waller if you're the person who makes the chai for us every single day. And I think that things like that all over our business that just sort of internally make a lot of sense and we think are fun and work really well, but don't always translate all that well externally.
Well, excellent. Now, you just had some financial information out there, and like, congratulations, the business kind of like looks to be doing absolutely amazingly. For businesses kind of like out there, kind of like especially within the restaurant space at the moment, who want to maintain their top line and more importantly, their bottom line is stay kind of like majorly competitive. Other than having great people, what else would you kind of like recommend to them at the moment? What steps should they take to be successful?
Krishna, I don't think I'm smart enough to make recommendations to other people, but I would just say, I guess what we're concentrating on is just doing our absolute best against some pretty serious headwinds out there in many areas, to just look after our guests, look after our people better than we ever have, and then to embrace rather than push away really powerful technology in the form of AI, etc. And we haven't got our heads around this yet, but we're open to it and we are exploring um, ways in which we can just give ourselves better insight, eliminate areas of wastefulness and um, unnecessary bureaucracy within our business through just using the technology that is probably like the beginning of the internet again. If I'm honest, I think if you're not using this, you're probably going to be 50% as effective as somebody else who is. So, or maybe less. So I think that sort of thing, I think, is going to be quite important. It is going to be necessary for us to become slightly more efficient over the next few years, just because the pressures that are being piled upon us and the cost increases being piled into our industry. I'm not sure we can pass many more of those on now without pushing guests to eat out less.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously kind of like, we've had Brexit, we've had the cost of living crisis, we had the energy crisis, we've had the budget. Like, I mean, there's definitely going to be stuff coming up next year that nobody's even kind of like, planned for. But what are you expecting next year in terms of 2025? What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be?
I'm praying for an end to interesting times, and I'd love the most boring year on record. That would be phenomenal. I'm not naive enough to hope for it. Um, what's going to happen next year? I think this budget has pushed inflation up a little bit for sure. So I think there are probably going to be some pretty significant price increases um, in the restaurant industry that I think people are really nervous about putting through next year, but I'm not sure how people are going to get away with not doing it. Um, so I think we'll see some of that. And then I think probably, and I don't like to be doom and gloom, but I think there are going to be a lot of businesses that just really struggle to hold on given the pressure that they're under next year. So I think that could be quite tricky. I think there might be some closures next year across our industry. And then I think, yeah, AI is the big one. I do really think by the end of next year, pretty much everyone, whether you're thinking about it now or not, everyone's going to have embraced it, and we're all going to get to know it a bit better. And there are going to be some brilliant providers within our industry coming in and helping us all to understand where that might be really useful for us. So I think that's going to be a big one for next year.
And on to kind of like final kind of like thoughts and trends for 2025. I can't really get through this without mentioning America. And if you can tell us a little bit about the pop-ups that you guys did there, and I noticed a couple of things in the media about potentially USA was on the cards, right?
Yeah, look, we did a pop-up with pasties for 2 weeks. We did breakfast only, midweek breakfast only, actually. So Monday to Friday, 2 weeks. We sold out in 4 minutes, broke the Resi app, and it had, I think, 20,000 people on the waiting list for cancellations, which was so insane and way more than we had ever
It's a
expected.
good breakfast.
It was, I mean, it is a good breakfast, but it was, we just weren't expecting that. The amount of love was awesome. We had an incredible amount of fun while we were over there. And yeah, it sort of brought us back and got us really excited about doing the US. So Cubby and I are over in New York in January. And then maybe we'll check out some other places later on in the year as well. But we're really keen to do America. I don't know when we'll do it. It won't be next year, but we are going over and starting to try and find a site, which would be really cool.
Excellent. That's very cool. And what else is on the cards for Dishoom in 2025?
A couple of bits that I don't know whether we're talking about or not, but we do have we're opening one more Dishoom next year and one more permit room next year, which we're really excited about. And I can't wait to when I can talk about the permit room a little bit more because there's some other really fun stuff going on there.
Excellent. And are these going to be London openings or elsewhere?
One might be, one might not be. Yeah.
Poker face, poker face. Brian, thank you so much for
I'm the
joining.
poker face in the world, unfortunately. Yeah.
You almost went for it and forgot we were being recorded, but anyway, it's fine. But look, thanks very much for running over things with me. I really appreciate it. I think we went well over the 15-minute time slot, but I really appreciate it and wish you guys all the very best for 2025.
Cheers,
Thanks.
Chris. Have a good day. Take care.